It was such a simple sentence. Calm. Polite. Almost careless. But for Daniel, it felt like the reopening of a wound that had never truly healed. His hands froze mid-motion, his breath caught somewhere between anger and disbelief, and for a brief moment, the entire world around him seemed to fade into silence. Because the man who had asked that question, the man standing in front of him in a tailored suit, surrounded by quiet authority, was the same man who had once turned his life upside down. And now, after everything, he was asking if Daniel was still upset. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of people who refuse to give up, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to The Kindness Chronicles. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. Daniel hadn't always been this tired. There was a time when his laughter came easily, when his shoulders didn't carry the invisible weight of survival, when life felt like something to look forward to rather than something to endure. Back then, he was just a young man with modest dreams, a stable job, and a small but happy family. Everything changed the day his wife passed away. It wasn't sudden, but it still felt that way. Illness crept in slowly, stealing moments piece by piece until there was nothing left to hold on to. And when she was gone, Daniel was left standing in the quiet ruins of a life they had built together, holding the tiny hand of his 3-year-old daughter, Lily, trying to figure out how to be both mother and father in a world that didn't pause for grief. He didn't have the luxury of breaking down. Bills still needed to be paid. Rent still came every month. Lily still needed food, care, warmth, and love. So Daniel did what many silent heroes do. He kept going. He worked longer hours, took extra shifts, sacrificed sleep, and learned to cook meals he had never made before. He braided Lily's hair with clumsy fingers, read bedtime stories with tired eyes, and whispered promises into the dark that he wasn't sure he could keep. For a while, he managed. Barely, but enough. Then came the day that changed everything. Daniel worked as a mid-level operations assistant at a large corporate firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and stability was all he needed. Or so he thought. The company had recently appointed a new CEO, a man known for efficiency, discipline, and results. Within weeks, changes began sweeping through the organization like a cold wind. Departments were restructured. Budgets were cut. Employees were evaluated, not by loyalty or effort, but by cold metrics on a spreadsheet. Daniel tried to keep up. He really did. But life didn't care about corporate deadlines. Lily fell sick often, and childcare was expensive. There were mornings when he arrived late because he had spent the night at the hospital. There were afternoons when he had to leave early because no one else could pick her up. His performance slipped. Not drastically, but enough to be noticed. Enough to be recorded. Enough to matter. The meeting lasted less than 10 minutes. That was all it took for years of effort to be reduced to a quiet apology and a formal termination letter. The CEO didn't even know his name. To him, Daniel was just another underperforming employee in a system that demanded perfection. And just like that, Daniel's world collapsed. Unemployment didn't just take away his income, it stripped him of dignity, stability, and hope. Days turned into weeks as he searched for work, juggling interviews with caring for Lily, who didn't fully understand why her father looked so worried all the time. Savings ran out quickly. Bills piled up. There were nights when Daniel skipped meals so Lily wouldn't have to. Nights when he sat in the dark after she fell asleep, staring at nothing, wondering how everything had fallen apart so completely. Anger grew quietly inside him. Not loud, not explosive, but steady and heavy. He wasn't angry at life. He wasn't even angry at himself. He was angry at the man who had made a decision without ever seeing the full picture. The man who had never known what it meant to choose between a meeting and a sick child. The man who had never had to hold his world together with nothing but sheer will. Months passed. Daniel eventually found work again, but not the kind he once had. It was part-time, unstable, and far from what he needed. Still, he kept going. Because stopping was never an option. And then, one day, something unexpected happened. A community initiative launched by a major corporation began offering support programs for struggling parents. It included job training, childcare assistance, and employment opportunities for those willing to start over. Daniel hesitated at first. He didn't trust systems anymore. But desperation has a way of pushing people forward, even when trust is broken. So he applied. Weeks later, he found himself standing in a large, modern office building, clean, polished, and intimidatingly familiar. He hadn't realized it at first, but this initiative was being run by the same company that had once let him go. The same company. The same leadership. The same CEO. Daniel considered walking away. Every step inside felt like reopening an old wound. But then he thought of Lily, her small hands, her quiet strength, her unwavering belief that her father could fix anything. So he stayed. The program was different from what he expected. It wasn't just about work. It was about rebuilding lives. They offered flexibility, understanding, and support that Daniel had never seen before in a corporate setting. Slowly, cautiously, he began to hope again. He worked hard, not just because he needed the job, but because he needed to prove, to himself, that he still had something left to give. Weeks turned into months. Daniel's efforts didn't go unnoticed this time. Supervisors praised his dedication. Colleagues respected his resilience. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen, not as a liability, but as a person. And then came the day everything came full circle. A company-wide event was held to celebrate the success of the initiative. Employees gathered, stories were shared, and achievements were recognized. Daniel stood among them, nervous but proud, holding on to a quiet sense of accomplishment he hadn't felt in years. That's when he saw him. The CEO. Standing just a few feet away. Older, perhaps. Slightly softer in demeanor. But unmistakably the same man. Their eyes met. And in that moment, time seemed to rewind. All the memories, the pain, the anger, they rushed back in an instant. Daniel expected nothing. No recognition. No apology. No acknowledgement. But then something unexpected happened. The CEO walked toward him. There was no audience around them, no spotlight, no grand stage. Just two men standing face to face, connected by a past neither of them could ignore. And then came the question. Still upset with me? It wasn't defensive. It wasn't dismissive. It was human. Daniel felt 1,000 emotions rise within him. Anger, sadness, confusion, all tangled together in a storm he had carried for so long. For a brief moment, he considered letting it all out. Telling him everything. Making him understand the damage his decision had caused. But then something shifted. Daniel thought about the months that followed. The struggles, yes, but also the growth. The nights he learned to be stronger. The way he and Lily had grown closer. The resilience he discovered within himself. He realized something he hadn't before. That moment, the one that broke him, had also reshaped him. It didn't erase the pain. But it gave it meaning. And so, instead of anger, something else came forward. Clarity. His answer came quietly, but with a strength that surprised even him. He wasn't upset anymore. Because he understood now that sometimes, people make decisions without knowing the full story. Sometimes, systems fail individuals. Sometimes, life forces you into battles you never asked for. But what defines you isn't what happens to you. It's what you choose to become after. The CEO listened. Truly listened. And for the first time, he seemed to see Daniel, not as an employee, not as a number, but as a person with a story worth hearing. That moment changed everything. Not just for Daniel, but for the CEO as well. Because behind that simple question had been something deeper, a recognition of past mistakes, a desire to understand, and perhaps, a quiet hope for forgiveness. In the weeks that followed, changes were made within the company. Policies became more compassionate. Flexibility was introduced for parents and caregivers. Stories like Daniel's were no longer overlooked, they became the foundation for a better system. Daniel didn't just rebuild his life. He became part of something bigger. A reminder that even the smallest moments, the simplest questions, can carry the power to change lives. Years later, when Lily was older and life had settled into something peaceful, Daniel would sometimes think back to that day. Not with anger, but with gratitude. Because the man who had once taken everything away had, in an unexpected way, helped him find something far more valuable. Strength. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of resilience, forgiveness, and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive, reaching people who may need hope today.